We'll answer all your questions, and there are microphones. Actually, one we're going to set up.
In the early 70s, where I grew up in Germany, I started to campaign to take out Latin and go DNA in our design college. And a friend of the family, he was in the CIA, he was really enchanted by the idea, and they were working, not him personally, but some people were working on the very first Al-Qaeda cell, the very first 9/11, and they actually killed the entire cell, and it was an identical blueprint to what was executed now. The only thing that was left out, I think, was a building in Germany in the city of Berlin, but I mean, there was some other European center that they had planned on targeting.
Can you wrap that up for us now? What does that all
mean? I just like to bring it into the concept of looking for people in Parliament. I believe that it is a little bit related to going on to DNA base and the big fight of how we will do this legally, that everybody makes an equal amount of money and that there isn't so much turbulence in the global market as far as currency goes, because there seem to be constant frictions in that area and in the area of simply dropping the Latin and all the in-between and going DNA and legalizing it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Over here.
Hello. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, sounds good.
Richard, thank you again for returning to Victoria. I think I'm a member of a very perhaps unique group, or maybe many of us in the group, but I actually lost a friend in 9/11, so obviously it was more than just an event that happened and it was outside the family. His name was, and you can find it online, Donald Robson. That's R-O-B-S-O-N. I used to double date with his sister Nancy.
Thank you for sharing.
And I just wanted to say that being an old, he was a family friend who obviously went in 9/11. And there's one, I think there's probably one question that maybe he's always asked when the media is looking at us, and I would like you to comment on it. In the Edward Snowden scenario of a whistleblower coming out, why hasn't there been a 9/11 inside job whistleblower come out and say, this is what's happening?
Well, there's a number of them, actually, whistleblowers. Look at Sibel Edmonds. Look at who is an FBI translator who found lots of incriminating information. There are whistleblowers right now in our own Congress, 7 of them, Congress members, Walter Jones and Bob of the 9/11 Commission, Bob Graham, are blowing the whistle on the CIA, who redacted 28 pages of information that seems to implicate the Saudis rather than Osama bin Laden for the crimes of 9/11, which I don't know how useful that will be to our particular case, but it's certainly important information for the American people to be aware of. And there are whistleblowers like the CIA agent Susan Lindauer, who was tortured by the CIA, held illegally. And she's talking about 9/11 and some specific facts about it being an inside job. I don't have whistleblowers up here because I'm talking about physical evidence. But you can read the books of David Ray Griffin. Did anybody come forward and say, sorry guys, I'm one of the people who planted explosives in those buildings? It's not going to happen. First of all, we don't know if those people are still alive. We don't know that they haven't done that and what happened to them as a result of their doing that. We do know that the media is censoring this topic. 90% of the mainstream media is owned by 6 corporations. Well, who owns those corporations? You ever thought about this? Project Censored from Sonoma County in California did quite a bit of research, and they found a vast interlocking board of directorates that enables corporations in the defense industry, the oil industry, the banking industry, the insurance industry to own the flow of information coming out of the media industry, all of whom, by the way, benefited enormously financially from 9/11. So when you talk about whistleblowers, they don't have a forum. Every Whistleblower Protection Act in the United States is corrupt enough to stop whistleblowers, and you know how persecuted they are. Look at Edward Snowden, who's just bringing truth to the American people, and he's vilified by the powers that be, not even willing to take responsibility for the illegal surveillance, mass surveillance of Americans and people all around the world, simply going after the messenger as if he is some evil creature. That's what happens to whistleblowers. That's a precedent. That's a message to whistleblowers. This is what will happen to you if you open your mouth. It's intimidation and fear tactics. Yes?
Hello, thank you for coming to town.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, two questions. One, the tectonics of the buildings falling, would this have affected Building 7's integrity? And two...
Well, let's take one at a time. The towers did fall. And when they fell, they didn't fall with one big crash. They fell, as you saw, over a period of 12 seconds, one structural member every, millisecond or whatever, after another. So we're only talking about 4-ton structural elements falling one at a time. This is not going to, it doesn't seem to have done any of the damage. I mean, the official report also does not cite the collapse of the Twin Towers as being anywhere near responsible for the collapse of Building 7. Not even some of the beams that directly hit it. They are saying that that's an insignificant factor. It's normal office fires.
And yet, some of the other buildings' integrity was credited to the crash of...
Some of the other buildings' integrity?
Some of the other buildings that were taken down in the area.
Are said to have done what?
The integrity of those buildings have been affected.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're talking about 100,000 tons of structural steel falling on neighboring buildings, other than Building 7, which we just talked about. Building 6 had huge damage. The Marriott Hotel had huge damage. Half of it was cut in half. And even so, the rest of it didn't collapse. These structural steel buildings are incredibly robust. Even the Twin Towers, which NIST cites as being extremely strong, redundantly designed, not going to collapse as a result of the planes. And these other buildings didn't collapse, even though half of them was completely destroyed by this steel.
In terms of the nanothermite, what I've read on the website, there are these 4 samples that are sort of continuously cross-referenced among people who have, have the technology to investigate them. Why are there only 4 samples?
Well, they asked for samples, and there are more than 4. They ruled out some samples because they didn't have chain of evidence for them, or they weren't sure where they came from, stuff like that. There is plenty of dust. In fact, what they did with this dust is put hundreds of tons of it in a big hole and put 6 feet of concrete over it on Fresh Kills landfill so that nobody could get to it. But it's there if we can ever get enough public pressure to unbury it and its mysterious nature.
So there is, in fact, they do know where
Yeah.
a ton of it is.
100 tons.
We just need to get it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, 90,000 tons of concrete in each building being responsible for 30% of that dust. So you can do the math and come up with, I don't know how many 100,000 tons of this, maybe 1 million. Hi. I'm not, sorry, I'm going to come back to you. I'm not being fair.
Hi.
3 questions.
Can you step right into that microphone with your mouth? Thanks.
3 questions. Number 1, what is the goal of what you're doing here?
Can we just take them one at a time? The goal our goal is to get a new investigation. The way we're doing that is by, and we've already submitted our petition to Congress, every member of Congress, and our DVDs, when we had 1,000 architects and engineers signed on to our petition, and this September when we had 2,000 architects and engineers. We have gotten no satisfaction from Congress, and we're unlikely to do so without public pressure. This is a third rail for them. Even those who may not be aware of the truth of 9/11 or are in denial about it, they are just not able to touch it because they get such incredible reactions and pressure from other congressmen, their peers, even the American public, who is in fear and ignorance and denial about this. So we're going to the American public and the public around the world, particularly in Canada, because we believe Canada is more free of the shock and awe produced on 9/11, more free of media censorship. You want to give me a feedback on that one? Okay. Maybe more free of media censorship. We're not getting much press coverage, I have to admit, on this tour. It is the alternative media, and not much of them either, that is willing to cover this issue. It is a heavily censored. So our goal is to educate the public directly in tours like this, and with our 40,000 member email list, which I hope you all signed up for. When the public that's what stopped the Vietnam War. The press did not stop the Vietnam War. The congressmen did not stop the Vietnam War. We stopped the Vietnam War by putting pressure on them. Margaret Mead is said to be quoted, never underestimate the ability of a small group of people to make incredible change. In fact, it's the only thing that has made change, is people putting pressure on power. We're speaking truth to power. We're inviting people to rethink how they relate to authority. We do not want authority to give us the truth. We want to give the truth to authority, and that's what we're about. So our goal is roundabout. Eventually, a credible investigation, but that will take public pressure. Number 2.
You alluded to a small group of companies, people who would profit by this. How did they profit by that, and who are these people?
Well, we're talking about industries, first of all. The war industry benefited amazingly in a $48 billion increase and start the war on terror. Okay, that's quite a benefit. Cui bono? Who benefited? The banking industry loaned all the money for all of this war on terror. We're talking trillions of dollars, actually, overall, that are spent on the war on terror, bankrupting the United States. And I know there's been a lot of money spent here in Canada, too. And the media benefited by selling newspapers and stories in the amazing set of stories that got so much attention, news. Anytime there's a hysterical, outrageous. The oil industry benefited enormously also. By some researchers, we've stolen the oil in Iraq from Saddam Hussein and now the Iraqi people. The people who run the drug industry, many researchers, we don't go there ourselves, but what we've heard is that the opium industry historically is responsible for profits that exceed all the oil companies put together. This is an incredible. Who do you think is running that show? The Taliban had cut off the flow of opium coming out of Afghanistan to 187 metric tons. Before they came into power, it was 2,800 metric tons. What do you think it is today? After we kicked the Taliban out, it went immediately to 3,500 metric tons, and we're told by researchers in the United Nations' own records that it's now 6,500 metric tons and climbing. Somebody and those who research this cite the banking institutions that we know are corrupt as being responsible for that. I don't know. I don't do that research, but I'm just trying to answer your question as best I can.
Silverstein.
What about it? Oh, well, in a smaller way, you have the owner of the World Trade Center. He owned Building 8, built Building 8 in the 80s, Larry Silverstein and company, and 6 weeks prior to 9/11, he secured the rest of the Twin Towers and the other buildings associated with the World Trade Center. And again, the Twin Towers, why would you buy the Twin Towers when they were half occupied? They were required by the city to be abated because they're full of asbestos in a $3.5 billion project, and mechanical and electrical systems totally out of date. A building that's a white elephant that nobody wants, that he won in basically a no-bid contract from public hands transferred to private hands 6 weeks prior to 9/11, benefited enormously by the incredible package of insurance that he got for anti-terrorism, terrorist threats on those buildings. So that's a factor. That's not evidence. That's why it's not in my presentation, but it's certainly something for investigators to look into, I think. Number 3?
Has there been any changes to the building codes to make these buildings safer?
There are no changes to the building codes that are structural. And structure is what was cited as the problem by NIST. This is a huge problem. If Building 7 could fall at free fall due to thermal expansion in a set of building components that are used fairly commonly in buildings, then we should have seen a massive change. But not only were most architects and engineers remaining unaware of Building 7, but these codes were not changed. They did add fireproofing. They did add exiting measures to the International Building Code, but not structural. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for coming to Victoria. Often we get overlooked on tours like this. Anyways, my question is, if you're familiar with the book by author S.K. Bain, it's the most dangerous book in the world, 9/11 as a mass ritual, and if so, what are your views on that topic?
This is a dark topic, and we don't go there, not because we're afraid, but because our audience and most of us are not ready for it. A lot of researchers have uncovered that those in power who give us false flag operations like 9/11, false flag being how most wars have been started throughout history, including World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, where we attack somebody or provoke somebody to attack us so that we can get into a war, so that those industries we talked about can benefit and that most people, common people, can suffer. False flag operations like 9/11 are designed to get us into war. And I wanted to explain that concept, and in the process I forgot the question. Sorry. Oh, the book. So who's giving us these wars? And what is there? Is it just greed? Or is there something more? I mean, somebody told me last night, and it just shocked me, that the engineering of the aspects of this building and the science and the forensics are pale in comparison to the evil that we're talking about here, ultimately. And I'm not a theologian, so I don't wrestle with, fortunately, with those issues. But there are those who do, and the author of this book is one of them. Did you want to add more about that? Because I don't.
Well, yeah, I know it's a touchy subject, but it's something I find very, very interesting, and I find it's not an easy book to read. After only reading about half of it, I found myself just sitting on the couch, not really being able to do anything for a week.
Yeah.
But
Anybody identify with it?
It's like a healing process to go through. It's like if you're sick, you have to get something out of you. So you go through this sickness period where your body cleanses itself, And I think ultimately this is a spiritual thing where 9/11 was used to put something upon the world, like a form of evil. And I think this book details that. And by reading it, it helps you to get it out of you. I think that's what I was going through, where I couldn't really do anything for a week, and all these creepy feelings things that I was...
It is creepy, isn't it?
Yes. And thank you again for putting this on.
You're very welcome. Thank you for mentioning that. I don't like the creepy parts of this. It's creepy enough, isn't it? Just killing 3,000 people on purpose and convincing the world, or some great percentage of the world, that it's somebody else that did this. Let's go.
Yes. Again, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
I used to be president of the Victoria Coalition for Survivors of Torture. So I know a fair bit about how refugees and systematic changes have occurred in treaty rights for various people who've been subject to those kinds of measures. Canada has not been immune to the repercussions of 9/11. There was a member of Parliament, I should call him here, on Vancouver Island under the Jack Layton. He was head of an NDP party here, who dared to question 9/11 official story. She was very quickly fired by the head of the NDP, the same party represented by Paul Dewar. So that just shows how dangerous it was to speak out about this a few years ago. So those things have changed, but there's still a long way to go here in Canada as well.
Thanks. I think those of us who are going, not us, you, who are running for office or considering it, do need to consider the level of vitriol that you're likely to experience as a result of speaking out about 9/11. It'll be harder for you than it is for me. I've got an audience that's 95% friendly to me, 99% here. And you're coming to see me. This is my territory, if you will. So I can handle it. I don't get much of the attacks. Out there on the internet, yes, but I don't read much of that because it doesn't motivate me. But you're going to have to face people directly. You're out there stumping, right? This is a message. So we're going to offer our support to you. That's our commitment. And we have many ways of helping you. And I'm just deeply honored that those of you who have stepped up to run for office or considering it. My hat is off. So that's a total of, we have 6 so far from our previous, 4 tonight. That's 10 already. We're halfway to 20, which was our goal. We're just going to have to move our goal up to 30, and maybe by the time we get to Newfoundland, it'll be 40 or 50. Yes, sir. And after we answer, hopefully I can answer your question, I'm going to invite the activists in Victoria up. So we'll have Brian and Elizabeth and Gregor and Paul, all of you who can come up. I want you to hear how these people heard about 9/11, why they're here, what they're doing in Victoria and the surrounding area, and how you can help. So this is the most important part of our whole evening. But first, your question, sir.
I think you're aware more than I am of the monstrosity of the forces against you, my question was just going to be how can you respond to that? I think you already have. Specifically, infiltration to movements, like I understand it in the States when you guys were having your truth moment, you have people coming in from the outside pretending to be one of you, all that kind of stuff. Is that true? Does that happen?
I imagine that it does. I don't have proof of that. People have these personalities, particularly volunteers, of which we have 60 of them, and 20 of them on our core teams. And, there's friction that develops, and some people, when enough of it develops, calls somebody a name, like you suggested, an infiltrator. We don't allow that on our teams. We keep it as harmonious as we possibly can. But there have been divide and conquer results. I won't call them conscious tactics because I don't know that to be the case. But there are theories out there that are quite different than ours about how the towers came down that we don't agree with. We don't think is backed by the hard, cold science that we're providing you tonight. And so I don't support those theories. And some people call the people that do disinformation, whatever. I don't know. I just know that I'm going to give the hard, cold facts that can stand up in a court of law, that stand up to reason, stand up to scientific method, and that can be understood and agreed to by audiences, virtually overwhelmingly so in this case tonight. So I hope that helps. Thank you. I'm sure there are disinformation agents. I just don't know who and where they are. They're not making enough of a fuss to bother me yet. And somebody asked me at one time, have you ever been threatened? I mean, we are talking about the largest mafia that's ever existed. If you think about what it takes to put a program of execution of something like 9/11 in place and largely get away with it and cover it up through the media, the judicial system, which is very finely crafted to channel 9/11 lawsuits through one judge, Hellerstein, who dismisses the ones he doesn't like the ones that 9/11 Truth members provide, and very carefully controls the rest of them. It's a system that's very difficult to manage, and many have failed in their attempts to bring 9/11 justice. So I wanted to add that. So if Elizabeth and Brian would come up, I want you to hear from them because they have a whole lot to add, and Paul and Gregor and all the other We Are Change, Victoria activists. We're going to hear from them one at a time, and we'll go through fairly rapidly, except for Elizabeth, who I really want to, that's a good place for that microphone, encourage to tell you about one of the 9/11 Truth Movement's powerful arrows in its arsenal, and that is the assembly of the best evidence for not just the Twin Towers, but a broad range of evidence. And she has single-handedly, along with David Ray Griffin, who they're working together, created this 9/11 consensus panel. So I wanted to encourage you to share that with everybody.
Thank you, Richard. Can you hear me? Yes, Dr. Griffin and I we founded the consensus panel in 2011. And we invited 23 researchers, 6 PhDs and 3 attorneys, 3 journalists, a medical doctor, 3 engineers. And we got together and we reviewed 37 official claims of the official story. And we use a medical model in which we're all blind to one another while we're looking at the evidence. David and I will draft a statement against the official story, and these 23 panel members will review it and give us feedback, and then we'll incorporate that feedback and send it out again. And we do that 3 times until we get 85% agreement from our 23 members, and then we publish the point. And the points we've created to date completely support the work of Richard Gage and his architects and engineers. But we also go further. We've looked at the hijackers. We've looked, for example, in Dulles Airport, there were 300 video cameras running the morning of 9/11, all over the airport. Not one of them got a single picture of any of the hijackers, the 5 hijackers that left. And this was evidence from a contractor who actually looked at all this footage. It took him a whole month with the FBI watching over his shoulder. And I just happened to find that online. It was in a magazine about how you do, it was to do with these surveillance type of magazine. And this guy just happened to say, I had the job of looking through all this footage. And we know that there was no photographs. There was nothing. So all this about the hijackers, there's so much evidence that the hijackers probably were just patsies that never really made it onto the planes. Then there's the whole area of the cell phone calls from the planes. That's just fascinating. There's been so much. We've done a lot of research on that. Is that better? So if you are interested in really informing yourself about what we call the best evidence, because the Delphi method that we use is actually used in medicine to create the best evidence in all areas of medicine. They have committees that review something like childhood ear rape, where you have 20 people in the medical field doing this Delphi method, and when they come out with the best evidence on childhood ear rape, it benefits the whole medical community worldwide. And that's why we selected the Delphi method. So you can trust the information that the 9/11 Consensus Panel has developed. We developed it so that the media would have an opportunity to trust something. You know, like I think when they finally get around to the 9/11 investigation, the work of the Consensus Panel will be really foundational, because nothing has been done like that. And we did it for the media and the public, and we've got 37 points now. And the other thing is that we've developed 8 points about what the top commanders, the top political figures, the Bush administration, and their top generals were doing that morning. And that is really interesting. We had to go into the archives of the 9/11 Commission, and we got the original interviews that the Commission did with all these generals. And those weren't published anywhere. They weren't even included in the 9/11 Commission. So we've got information that's not being seen anywhere in public in our consensus points. And it's really shocking. And so you can go online at consensus911.org. And down the left-hand side, you can see the panel members, the 23 of us. You can see the honorary members. One of the honorary members is the honorary president of the Italian Supreme Court. He's the best-known living judge in Italy. He tried the Aldo Moro case and the assassination of one of the popes, an attempt in Italy. He tried both those cases. That put him right up there as the top judge in Italy. And he's an honorary member of the 9/11 Consensus Panel, as is the longest-serving member of the British House of Commons, Michael Meacher. Really respected guy. So we've got top-notch people. Lynn Margulis, until her death about a year and a half ago, was on our list. They're right there on the website. So we have a great deal of credibility, but we're not well known because the media will not touch us. They're terrified of us.
How did I get involved? I accidentally got a book from the library. I was trying to get a book for my daughter about Alice in Wonderland. And there was an Alice in Wonderland and the 9/11 Twin Towers that I got, and I thought about returning it. And I took it home and I read it, and it blew my mind. And I'd seen the Victoria 9/11 Truth guys out and about in the community a few times when I was out with my family, and after doing enough research looking at it, it became time to either decide that what I discovered is not true and just leave it alone, or if it was true, as a person that values truth, justice, and has children that need a future of truth and freedom, I had to get active and get involved. And so I met up with Victoria 9/11 Truth, and I helped Greg rebrand a different group, We Are Change Victoria, and we've just been going hard ever since. So hopefully you guys come out to the film night tomorrow and network with like-minded individuals and spread the message of truth and freedom and justice. Because 9/11 isn't just an American thing, it's Canadian, you know. Freedom died on 9/11, and it affected us all in Canada, and we're watching our freedoms be eroded every single day on this justification of the war on terror, but it's not a war on terror. It's a war on you.
So my name is Greg Hill. I'm with We Are Change Victoria. I started with the group about 6 years ago and haven't looked back. I woke up to that about 6 years ago and changed my life profoundly. Something pulled at my heartstrings where I had to keep digging. And we've been celebrating as a group every year for the last 6 years. We started out as Victoria 9/11 Truth and merged into We Are Change. We Are Change actually started in New York City from a young man named Luke Rukowski. And that's since blossomed at a grassroots level to over 250 chapters in about 80 countries. And so we've kind of taken on the brand here, and we have about 580 members on our Facebook page right now. We host a weekly meeting at Gorgeous Coffee every Sunday night at 7 o'clock. Everybody's welcome to come. Tomorrow night we do have a movie night. We are screening Architects and Engineers movie, Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out, so please join us tomorrow night at 7 o'clock at Gorgeous Coffee. Our mission is simple. We're here to inspire, engage, and activate liberty-minded individuals. And so I would maybe just like to leave you with a closing quote that I kind of live by, and that's courage. The key to happiness is freedom. The key to freedom is courage.
Wow.